I'm gonna be honest here. I'm looking forward to this review even less than usual. Which is saying a lot since there's only really one episode of Series 10 that I'm actually excited to review. Fucking guess which one. But Knock Knock is an episode that I've just never had any interest in, ever. It's the most bog standard, boring, dull, forgettable episode of Series 10. Like, don't get me wrong, it isn't the worst one ever. There's definitely more offensively bad ones than this one, but fucking hell. Every time I've had the misfortune of watching this shit, it's left me nothing but fucking bored. And I have zero interest in reviewing this episode, other than the fact that I know that Oxygen and Extremis are next, before we get another string of shit episodes. Seriously, I'm only 4 episodes in and Series 10 has done nothing special yet. My thoughts on every episode have remained pretty much exactly the same, except both Smile and Thin Ice are slightly worse than I remember. But is this episode going to be worse than I remember? Or after all of these years, am I going to be wrong and it's actually a subversive masterpiece? I fucking doubt it, but let's just get this shit over with. I need at least one good episode to keep me going, and there's one after this one. So let's just fucking power through it. So the episode starts on a montage of Bill and a bunch of other uni students looking for a place to stay, while a shitty Little Mix song plays in the background. Until this old man shows up asking if they need a place to live, so naturally, all 6 of them follow this obviously suspicious man to this huge house that one of the first things he tells them about is that a part of it is unsafe and it is incredibly cheap. Yet Bill is the only one who finds this remotely suspicious. We're only a minute and a half in, and my suspension of disbelief and care for these characters who are probably gonna die is so monumentally low that I already don't care. One of the many failures most horrors have is just having shitty, underdeveloped characters, so when they're in danger or they die, you just don't give a shit because they're bad characters. And this episode has pretty much already done that right at the start. This episode doesn't even deserve getting this quote used.
Wicked.
Just die already. Oh no! Anyway, so the titles roll and we get a scene of the Doctor helping Bill move her stuff to the house, because he has to get involved in the plot somehow, doesn't he? Luckily, we still get some 12 and Bill banter in the TARDIS, and thank fucking God, because we get none of that later in the episode, which is a shame, because this dynamic between these two has been one of the only things keeping me going through this shit series so far.
No, unless we've regenerated or had a big lunch.
Regenerate?
Pretty bonkful foreshadowing, not gonna lie, but please don't remind me that the worst Doctor ever came after this Chad.
He's just my
Friend.
granddad.
Wait, I don't look old enough.
I love him so much and I miss him immensely. 12 might be one of the most inconsistently poorly written Doctors we have, but fucking hell, I miss Capaldi so much. So Bill bullies him into leaving and we get set up for a cringy scene later with this guy sending a Bill hardcore. Not gonna say that I blame him, but fucking hell he can't take a hint. Bill showing her mum's picture around the room is nice though. Unfortunately, we both know why this scene is actually here, and that reason is a lie of the fucking land. But we'll get to that soon enough. So we get some really boring interactions between the quote-unquote characters before Bill finds the Doctor in the closet. The Doctor then points out a bunch of things wrong with the house that I'm surprised not one of these fucking gormless tits noticed. Especially the power socket one. You seriously expect me to believe that a bunch of people would willingly move into a house where the sockets wouldn't be able to charge their phones? Bull fucking shit.
Didn't hear you come in.
For a man such as myself, discretion is second nature.
Yeah, that's not suspicious at all. So naturally they complain to him about how shit the house is. I would have just not moved in. While the Doctor 360 MLG no-scopes some crackers. But then the landlord just fucks off. No, I'm serious. He came out of nowhere to ask questions that would be irrelevant to him anyway, since all he wants them for is to kill them, and then he just fucking leaves. So really, The purpose of him showing up there was to raise suspicion for a character who's already suspicious, give information to the Doctor in another unnatural way, and further bonk the audience about the tower being inaccessible. For fuck's sake. This episode is so easily written, my god. And also, we're already 15 minutes in, and next to nothing has happened yet except some really poorly thought out setup and filler. This episode seriously needs to get a fucking shift on, because it is wasting plenty of time, and plenty of my time. There's much more things I'd rather be doing than reviewing this piece of shit right now. Like, Thick Ice is bad, but there's plenty of interesting shit going on throughout, and Oxygen is after this. Why between these enjoyable enough episodes does it have to have the fucking most boring piece of shit between them? So the Doctor continues to piss off Bill and be weird, and then they play a good little mix song.
Do you know who this is?
Do I know who this is? Yes, I know who this is.
Honestly, as obviously forced as it was to have the Doctor come back to the house this early into the story, when Capaldi is carrying the scenes this much, I honestly can't get annoyed with it. But I do find it raises an interesting point about this show over the last 10 years, and that's its struggle to just get rid of the Doctor for an episode. Like, I get that he's the title character, but the Moffat era and the Chibnall era could have seriously benefited from not having him and her in every story, and do some companion solo stories. Especially since, besides Bill and Nardole, we've spent so much more time with any of these characters compared to Russell's, yet none of them have even come close to being as good as Russell's worst companion. Because, especially in the Chibnall era, any quote-unquote character scene gets seemingly shoved aside to make way for more of the Doctor, and the Doctor being quirky. To be honest, I think this episode could have benefited from not having the Doctor show up this early, because while he's being pretty funny, and Capaldi's comedic chops feel a lot more invested this time, surprisingly, because of scenes like this, we've had less time to further develop Bill, or add any development on any of these characters, which makes feeling invested in this episode very difficult, since the only real characters we give a shit about are the Doctor and Bill, who we both know are going to be fine. Tangents about post showrunning aside, I do actually like that Bill is super upfront about this being the part of her life that the Doctor isn't involved in, because this is an issue that we had with Clara which plagued Series 8, led to shit episodes like The Caretaker and In the Forest of the Shite. However, this time around, I do honestly feel like some of this stuff is a detriment to Bill's character, because at this point she's seemingly in denial or incredibly ignorant, because there is so obviously suspicious shit going on, yet she's still convinced it's a normal day. Like, come on, Bill's smarter than this. And we get the first of many moments in Series 10 where we could potentially add more onto Bill's character by seeing her interact with others, like how we've seen with most companions, but instead is just used to remind us that Bill is a lesbian. Right. I hadn't forgotten, show. We did meet her only 3 episodes ago. I didn't need a scene dedicated to reminding me. This isn't the worst this bonking gets, because this is the first time, but by the end of the series you'll have heard this so many unnecessary times that you'll have forgotten that Bill actually has any other character traits. So Lank dies and they start hearing knocking all around them, so they finna head out. And we get more scenes of creepy setup, which, to be honest, they're fine. And they're pretty interesting actually, because the doors and shutters sealing themselves with no mechanical parts. That's cool. It's just a shame the characters have been so poorly established in this, making it so when Girl Rigby dies, I just don't care. So we catch up with the character who, no joke, I actually forgot was in this episode, and we see him get blended in with the wood, and not gonna lie, this is a really cool visual.
Was it fucking cool? Absolutely was fucking cool. Was it worth it? I'm not so sure.
Because, again, I know I'm repeating myself, but the audience just doesn't care. This episode would be so much more impactful if we gave a fuck about any of these characters. Like, imagine if this story took place with Bill and Valerie. It would not only add another tie down to Earth for Bill as we learn more about their relationship, and the stakes would feel a lot more high because there's an established connection here. But with these fuckers, we haven't seen any of them before or any of them after this episode. And thank fucking God, because they're all so boring. This episode is such a fucking drag, my god. So the obviously creepy old man reveals his obvious creepiness to Bill and Fit. So they run away and unironically do the book pulled from the shelf cliche to get into the tower. Which is just fucking great. Especially since they don't even bother to attempt to explain it. Fantastic. So the doctor lures out something from the wood that turns out to be a bug, which definitely ups the creep factor of the story. At least for me personally. Not because I'm scared of bugs or anything, but it's just the thought of them crawling on me or someone's just... But even with my own personal bias, they don't really help this episode much outside of them just looking cool. So, of course, they escape through a lift. Sure. And they find out that the landlord does this every 20 years with different people to keep his daughter, in quotation marks, alive. And we find out what she looks like. Oh, the other one died, by the way. Anyway. Actually, no, not anyway. What absolute bullshit that this fucker could kidnap 6 people every 20 years for 70 years and not have been found out yet. How the fuck have none of their families or the fucking police investigated this shit? Anyway, we cut back to Bill and Fit to reveal the wooden lady, the thing that this story is most infamous for, and rightfully so, because this is, without a doubt, some of the best practical work this show has ever seen. She looks fucking amazing. Like, you are fully convinced that this is a person made of wood. As good as the one from Series 1 looked for its time, and even to this day, sometimes when she turns around you can see, like, creases in the skin, which kind of shatters the immersion of her being made of wood. But with this, it's honestly impressive how real it looks, and I think the creaky sound design and presentation definitely helps.
I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, yeah?
Oh, unfortunately it is still in this dogshit episode. So Cringe Fit extremely underreacts to being eaten alive by bugs, and strangely so does Bill. And even after hearing all her other friends are dead, she doesn't give much of a reaction, which is bizarrely out of character, especially considering how much value Bill has for all life, not just her friends. So the doctor figures out how all this shit happened, and there's one thing I found funny about this scene, and that's this.
No, wait, Doctor, that doesn't make sense. Why would he pick up insects?
This is recontextualized seconds later to reveal that he's her son, not her father, which is actually a good twist, but that still doesn't explain why, when the bugs first went to her, why they didn't just kill her like they did with everything else. So Bill's right in saying that this doesn't make sense, but not the part that she didn't think made sense. But also on that, how the fuck did this stupid wooden bitch not think in over 70 years, how could my father possibly still be alive? Even if her memories weren't preserved properly, it's still insane to think that she couldn't put together the dots in over 70 fucking years. David Suchet's performance definitely peaks here at least, as when he starts to break down and rage, I almost felt something for his character here. But once again, the context of the story and all the details kind of just remove it immediately, which is annoying because his acting here is really good. So we get a pretty lame resolution to the story, which might have worked if any of the characters in the story were remotely likable in any way whatsoever. But since they're not, this is just a disappointing way to end a disappointing story. Eliza was pretty good from what little we've seen of her, but with the whole tone this story was going for, it just dampens the whole experience that all of Bill's friends survives, and they escape, and live happily ever after. Fuck off! Except not even happily ever after, because we get another unnecessary vault bonking, and this one, added in a line, has already set up the fucking rage for the Doctor Falls and Missy's pathetic excuse of an arc. So it turns out that the Doctor has put in a piano, and with context now, we know that this is him being nice to Missy. Now, if this was the Sim Master in the vault instead of Missy, this would actually make a lot more sense. Since the last time we'd seen him, his last act was a redemption move and he saved the Doctor's life. So naturally the two would be closer. But because this series decided very last minute that Missy was going to become a good person, the Doctor has to be written like a fucking idiot almost every time they interact with each other. considering Missy's 2 appearances before this one was her trying to push him and Clara apart to break his heart and giving him an army, something he'd never accept, and the time after that she was just there and had him try to kill Clara. So already, without even reviewing one Series 10 Missy stories yet, this arc has fucked up right from the start. With the Sim Master in 10, the friendship angle was set up since the sound of drums. We saw so many moments of the two connecting in every episode they shared together. Besides Utopia, because he was there for like 2 seconds. But with Missy in 12, they do absolutely nothing. So this shit arc has already started to feel shoehorned in and forced before it's even properly begun. For fuck's sake. So, that was Knock Knock, and without a shadow of a doubt, this is the worst episode I've reviewed so far. While Capaldi actually seems like he's invested with this one, and Bill for the most part is still okay, there's just so much wrong with this episode, I don't think I'd ever want to rewatch it again. For starters, the characters in this episode are fucking shit. Eliza is serviceable, but that's probably because she's on screen for such a short amount of time, so there isn't really much to fuck with. The landlord is a pretty stupid character, even if he is well performed, because he goes around getting the things he wants in the stupidest ways possible, consistently. Bill's flatmates just aren't characters at all, and only really exist to die, but then undie at the end, which is pretty cringe, bro. And pretty much all of their dialogue is cringe. Speaking of cringe, why is Bill's character seemingly halted for this story? Seriously, she was just getting better and better and better with every appearance, but this time around, she's so flat and non-expressive most of the time that this story could have played out the same without her. And it probably would be better because it isn't damaging an existing character. When did I start reviewing Series 9 again? Seriously, why does Bill Potts, a character who went on a massive journey about death in the last episode, not give a single shit when she sees and hears that several of her uni friends are dead, especially since they're apparently so close, damaging one of the only good things about this series so far? Fantastic. And the plot itself to this one is just so poorly executed that even if the characters were good, I don't think this would be a gripping story to watch because of its messy execution. At least Capaldi is actually putting in the effort this time, however. Speaking of Capaldi putting in the effort, next up is Oxygen, which I'm actually gonna call by name because it's actually good. I do actually like that Bill is super upfront about this being the part of the doc. Fucking hell, what was that delivery, you testicle?